Good morning. It's Good Morning Uganda on UBC TV. Welcome back from the business desk with Joan. It's time for the agenda. My name is Julie F. Nantaba. Now, last week, the Inspector General of Government, Justice Aisha Naluze Batala, issued a stern warning to public officers and political leaders across the country to declare their wealth by April 30th, or else they will face persecution, dismissal, and other sanctions provided by the law. And it's what we're looking at, declarations of assets by public officers. To have this conversation with us is Dr. Patricia Achan Okiria, who is the Deputy IGG. Good morning, Dr. Patricia.
Julian. Good morning, viewers. I'm very happy to be here this morning and to be part of this conversation about declarations of incomes, assets, and liabilities.
It's the first time we are interacting this year, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Julie.
Right, but let's start this off with a preamble. Catch up of some sort. The new strategic plan was recently launched by the IGG's office. What are the strategies, bullet strategies in the strategic plan?
Well, we have a new strategic plan, and the strategic plan is just going further or deeper to unpack our mandate as the Inspectorate of Government. Our mandate is derived from Article 2 to 5 of the Constitution, and they're threefold. We have got the anti-corruption effort to eliminate corruption, abuse of authority, and public office. And then we have the ombudsman role, where we are basically promoting the rule of law and administrative justice in public offices. And we have the leadership code, where we are supervising and enforcing the leadership code of conduct. We are also doing good governance. We are fostering fair and efficient government within governance within all public institutions, and we are also continuing to do public awareness. In the strategic plan, we have got new strategic shifts, as in we are thinking about the new innovative ways to deal with corruption, which is basically a cancer in this country today. First of all, we are moving from reactive, complaint-driven investigations to intelligence-led, risk-based investigations. And we are also leveraging the statutory reports, the value for money audit findings, forensic analysis, and we are having targeted spot checks, where we're doing the spot checks basically to ascertain the quality of service delivery out there. And from case-by-case resolution of ombudsman complaints to systemic interventions, we want to do the systemic approach to the challenges we're having within ombudsman, and want to establish sectoral ombudsmen, where we are able to resolve these complaints of people saying, oh, I have worked for this number of time, the days I've retired, I don't see my pension, I don't see my gratuity, and so on. Then we want to also move from basic data screening to AI verifications of leaders. Now, we are going to be talking about declaration of assets. When assets are declared, we do verify them to ascertain the truthfulness. So we are moving from the data-driven to the IA driven verifications of leaders, and this will enable us to do more precise detection of risks, and this will also help us to do the targeted verifications of assets. And the strategic plan also guides us to move from output focused to outcome driven performance. We want to prioritize the results and impact over a mere activity completion to ensure that our interventions as the Inspectorate of Government are effectively to reduce corruption and strengthen accountability. And then we also want to move from relying solely relying on the anti-corruption agencies to a whole government approach through mainstreaming the anti-corruption measures. Like you might have heard, Julie, the challenge of sale of jobs and the mess in district service commissions. We want to deal with that using the whole government approach, where we come together as government agencies and institutions and say, what solutions can we have to this problem? Whole government approach, where we are coming with a toolkit to guide people, step-by-step methods of having to ensure that we eliminate these challenges of corruption from the government and civil service.
A very profound one. And before we even move ahead, you have pointed out that it will be the strategic plan also airs data using AI verification as opposed to data verification. As we may know very well that AI is fed by the data that's available.
Yes.
So how shall the AI also have accurate data that's that's used, yet the data that's available is...
We have been already updating our system with data. For instance, we have information on people who have retired, we have information on people who have passed on, we have removed that. And then when we receive declarations, remember it's online declarations, when we receive the declarations, we go ahead to verify. But the IA will help us to detect the red flags. If you have declared and said you earn 3 million per month, and the IA is able to quickly check through the system on the assets you've declared, and if they are not commensurate to your well-known sources of income, for instance, annually, it adds automatically and says if the person is on 3 million and gets these allowances and has this business and approximately earns this much, then it's able to generate that quickly and be able to ascertain whether or not someone has declared truthfully or not. So it helps us show us the red flags, and then we basically pick on those for verifications, and then we investigate, and then sanction to the leadership code tribunal. Yes.
That's very profound. And of course, you could also talk about the time factor in there.
Yes.
The time that is saved, and that's a major resource. Now, getting back to what we're supposed to speak on today, and that is the declaration of assets by public officers to a layman. What does declaration of public assets mean, and what is its legal basis?
First of all, when we talk about declarations of assets, it is provided for within the Leadership Code Act of 2002 as amended. And the Leadership Code Act is a law that sets out what is expected of leaders, what is expected of public officers in the exercise of their duties, in the exercise of their functions, and what is expected of them when they leave such offices. So the Leadership Code of Conduct basically is a set of rules and principles detailed within the Leadership Code Act, and the law basically places responsibility on the leaders to be able to declare their incomes, their assets, and their liabilities after every 2 years. Now, the leaders completed this exercise last year in March, and then the public officers are also expected to declare their incomes, assets, and liabilities to the Inspectorate of Government after every 5 years, and their time is coming, and that time is April 2026, where we are moving to. So to whom do the Leadership Code apply? The Leadership Code applies to anybody occupying a position in government who gets his salary or emoluments from the government of Uganda. So the Act sets minimum standard of behavior of leaders and requires them to declare their incomes and their assets and their liabilities to the Inspector General of Government. And when you look at the law again, the law basically helps us to guide us through how to carry out this exercise. But basically, the Leadership Code Act, specifically CAP 33, provides a framework which is designed specifically to promote integrity, accountability, and transparency among leaders, so that the people you're leading out there can trust you. The Act requires leaders to declare, and the history and purpose of this law is basically to ensure that we fight corruption. Right. It is a tool to fight against corruption and misuse of power by leaders out there. The Act also basically gives the mandate to the Leadership Code Tribunal to handle cases to do with breach of the laws within, as provided for within the Act. So why is declaration important? Like you asked, why should leaders declare their incomes, their assets, and their liabilities to the Inspectorate of Government? Now, the objective is within the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. For instance, all public offices are held in trust of the people. And that's why when some of us who studied civics during our time, I don't know whether you were born, but we were taught that democracy is government of the people, for the people, by the people. So when the Constitution says all public offices are held in trust of the people, that means that we, the leaders, are basically accountable to the people. And this declaration is basically part of that accountability to the people we are leading. And all persons placed in position of leadership and responsibility are supposed to be answerable to the people. And all lawful measures should be taken to expose, to combat and eradicate corruption, abuse of power, or misuse of power by those holding public or political offices. So this is the reason why the leaders need to actually declare their incomes, their assets and liabilities to the Inspectorate of Government.
Right, and kindly, just before we even move ahead, you talked about the fact that for as long as you're in a public office, you are serving the public.
Yes.
Are these asset declarations accessible to the public?
Yes, they are. These assets declared to the Inspectorate of Government are accessible to the public as provided for within the law. The law guides us step by step. If a member of the public would like to access this, then he writes to the Inspector General of Government for permission to have. Like right now, there are people who are applying for jobs in different places, like with the Judiciary, Judicial Service Commission. They basically write and request that they want to have a copy of their declaration, and we grant it because it's a requirement of the law. But there are procedures to take. A third party, for a third party to access this declaration, the third party must write. There is a fee payable. Previously it was 200. We revised it and brought it back to 100,000, which is manageable, and this person can be granted access. So declaration, basically what we are talking about, it promotes transparency. It promotes accountability in public service, and then it helps to prevent and detect corruption. It helps us to detect even illicit enrichment and conflict of interest. And it also ensures that public offices are held in trust of the people, like as provided for within the Constitution under the directive principles of state policy, and it strengthens public confidence in state institutions, because if the public has trust in the leaders who are occupying positions in this government, then basically that trust and confidence is strengthened. Rather than people being in lamentations, government etuyambe, this person is a thief and what. But if the people know what you have and how you got it, then we are basically strengthening that accountability and confidence in the people.
Indeed, and with the new strategic plan, I look forward to even these complaints reducing. The more of government here to Yambe and complaining about some of these government public officers. Now, what does the declaration process exactly look like?
Well, first of all, we need to appreciate the fact that people are supposed to be declaring, but we need to understand who is to declare. Leaders who are elected and appointed officials, as specified in the second schedule of the Leadership Code Act, and this includes the president, ministers, and these are leaders who declared previously. But now we're talking about public officers. It's important for us to understand who a public officer is. A public officer is any person working in a government ministry, department, agency, or local government whose salary is derived from the government of Uganda, and who is not a leader as provided for within the second schedule of the Leadership Code Act. So those are the people supposed to be declaring. People come up and say, no, me, I have nothing to declare. I'm just an office attendant. As long as you derive your salary or emoluments from the government of Uganda, you are supposed to be declaring. So you are a public officer because you're serving the government of Uganda. About the timeline of declaration, we said the leaders, according to the law, the public officials are supposed to declare in April 2026. So 1st April is the day we open the system, and then we close the system on the 31st. That is if April has 31st in it. Some months stop on 30th. I'm not quite clear about. But the declaration time, declare every 2 years in March for leaders, and public officials every 5 years, and that is in April. The last declaration for public officials was in 2021. And the next declaration is going to be in April this year. And all must declare within 3 months of assuming office. For instance, if you've just assumed office, the law requires you to declare within 3 months from the time you've assumed office, or before the existing existing declaration passes. So the last declaration was made, and then we also have the exit declaration. For instance, 6 months before you exit, for those who are going to retire, you can plan early and you declare 6 months. So that we know how are you going, what have you gone with, and so on. Still, it is to promote trust and accountability for the leaders. Yes.
And when you talk about that, it brings to mind family members of public officers.
Yes.
So as they're declaring their assets, and a family member also has their own assets that are not really attached to this individual, are they also affected in this declaration?
Well, now this takes us on what on answering the question what to declare. Because when you're declaring, you declare basically your interests. And your family members are part of
your interests.
Yes. So what to declare, we talk about incomes, assets and liabilities. So we have salary, allowances, business profits, rental, income. And then when we talk about assets, here we're looking at land, we're looking at houses, businesses, vehicles, securities, and bank accounts, both local and foreign. And then when we talk about liabilities, if you have taken a loan or a mortgage, or you have outstanding debts, you declare them. But in that form, why I was saying you actually declare your family members as well. Of course, you mention who your children, close associates, your children, your spouse. And then if you have bought for your spouse some property, or he has bought for you, basically you declare that because you have interest in that property as well. So it's important that it is declared. Why do we do that? Because sometimes people hide property in the names of their children, the names of the close associates, but it's important for us to know who are your children, who are your close associates, where do you have this interest, and so on. How to declare? Declarations are submitted electronically via the Inspectorate of Government online declaration system, which is found at www.igg.go.ug. Yes.
Profound at that. And if you're indeed watching us and you're following the program, I think it's really pertinent. For God and my country, it's pertinent that there's transparency at the end of the day in what each one has been given to steward. Let's look at the current level of compliance among public officers. What's it like?
Well, at the moment, the public officers actually are compliant, because previously we had over 80% response, and we expect that this time they may shift to 90%. Through the awareness, we are doing public education, reminding people about this particular exercise. We are using the media, and we're going to do regional awareness programs. I think they will be able to respond positively. It's about our initiative to move and remind the public officials. Then we have trained focal point persons in all ministries, departments and agencies and local government, and these focal point persons will be able to assist. We're actually preparing to train even more. Just this last week, letters were sent out to the different chief administrative officers to be able to nominate at least 3 in their different local governments, municipalities and cities, so that we have a holistic approach and everybody is brought on board. We know that these people will go a long way in giving the technical support to the public officials in the different areas where they are working in government. Yes.
Now, when I'm glad that you talked about the verification upgrade to AI, but I'm also curious to know what the verification process has been like before the new strategic plan. How has the IGG's office been able to verify for accuracy?
Well, verification has been a challenge because we are still on the ground in terms of manpower and then also in terms of resources. And we have been doing the online verification. So after someone has declared, after we have closed the system, then the system generates the red flags for us. But now using the AI, it will be even easier, because now AI goes deeper, launches deeper and adds up and gives us more accurate information. Previously, we would get to a level where we're even writing letters and saying, well, you didn't declare, we would like you to come and explain. And the person comes and shows evidence that, you know, the system even sent me an email. And so we had to clean up and say, no, we need to rely on AI for more accuracy, so that we don't go back and forth and begin summoning the people who are declared as if they had not declared. But you know, the most important thing is, I think, for people, for the public officers to know that there are breaches within the code, breaches within the leadership code of conduct. If you have not declared, then we also have a breach for late submission of declaration, for false or incomplete submission of declaration, and failure to submit a declaration, and even anticipatory declaration, where someone has 4 houses but is declaring that he has 21 in anticipation that he will get, or under declaration, where you have 21 and you're declaring only 2 or 3. So when we do our verification and our investigations, then this information comes to light, and then we prepare and submit these cases to the tribunal. The tribunal has penalties still provided for within the law. Again, penalties for non-compliance with the requirement. Failure to declare is a breach of the law, and it leads to penalties such as fines, caution, demotion, dismissal from office, or even vacation from office. And the tribunal is doing a great job. The tribunal is doing a great job. Recently, the terms of office of the tribunal members were renewed, and we had new members brought on board, and they have started a very good job. At the moment, we are actually working hand in hand to simplify the Leadership Code Act. We did the pre-testing, and we're going ahead to simplify it so that the ordinary citizen can understand his responsibilities within the law, and the leaders and public officials get to know what their responsibilities are, and they're able to comply with the provisions of the law.
Now, speaking of citizens, do citizens have a role to play in detecting false declarations?
Well, citizens have a very significant role. Like previously we've said, the fight against corruption is a dissidents' war. So citizens really need to come up and own this war and report cases to us, cases of suspicious, primitive accumulation of wealth. If you know that someone is a court clerk, and all of a sudden he has got a lot of assets around him, and he has not inherited from anyone, that is a red flag. A citizen should be able to whistleblow and give us that information. Citizens can contribute in actually reminding the leaders that we need to know, yes, we need to know what it is you have. Have you declared your assets? Have you declared your incomes? Have you declared your liabilities? So that the citizens get to know the worth of the leader, and in so doing they will put their trust and confidence in the leader, because that's an act of accountability, like we have already said earlier.
Right. In combating corruption, which is such a plague and a disease for Ugandans, how effective has asset declaration been, do you think, over the time? Well,
I am now going to my 5th year in the Inspectorate of Government. By the way, you did not congratulate me, Julie. I had my term of office, my contract renewed. As well, and as Deputy Inspector General of Government.
Right.
And
congratulations.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasant working and supervising the Leadership Code Directorate, because there I get to see and know who the leaders are, who the public officials are, whether they are compliant with the laws. We do a compliance check to see for every case we receive in the Inspectorate of Government, if this is involving a leader or public official, we do a compliance check. Did he declare? What he declared, is it commensurate? And then also, you talked about the verifications. We do pick the red flags from the system off, but also we do we cluster depending on the risks. We look at the risks, how these leaders are exposed and how risky they are, and then we basically pick from those. Like we can say now we want to do undersecretaries, or we want to handle heads of procurement units in all ministries, departments and agencies, and we basically do verifications. But going forward, when we get manpower, when we get more resources, we'll be able to do massive, because sometimes you receive 38,000 declarations and you cannot verify all of them. So AI will help us, because we'll be able to do the system based and pick the red flags and investigate those ones and submit to the leadership code tribunal. But we find this a very significant tool in the fight against corruption, because, well, it brings leaders up to speed with the fact that they need to remain accountable to the people they are leading. And secondly, it also helps to build trust and confidence in the people, in the citizens out there. And we have seen the response, the improvement, especially in the compliance rate. Like the last time we received declarations from leaders, the performance was over 90%, yes. And even for public officials, we expect that kind of improvement. But how is the improvement happening? Because we have taken the Inspectorate of Government close to the people, so that the people get to know what we are doing, where we are, and how they can contribute in the war against corruption as citizens of Uganda. And they're responding quite well from the quality of the cases they're submitting to the Inspectorate of Government. And we are also now having a feedback mechanism where they're reporting cases to us, but we are also giving feedback on how far we have gone, what level we have reached with the investigation, and whether we have taken the matter to court for prosecution or not. But it is very important that we maintain that feedback, because without that feedback, then the perception will be a bit different. The citizens will not know what is happening in the institution, and that will help us to basically curb the lamentations we were talking about. If they know us and what we are doing, and we are close to them, and we are able to give feedback, then they will have that trust in the institution as well.
Speaking of the time you have served, what trends have you observed when it comes to declaration cycles in your tenure so far? Well,
when it comes to declarations, we have seen people doing the 11th hour action.
So
where
Ugandan.
we are saying, yes, so Ugandan, we are saying we're opening the systems on the 1st of April, but people are waiting for the last day or the eve of the last day to be able to submit. And when they do that, then the systems are clogged, and many people are rushing to submit at the 11th hour. But with the sensitization and awareness program, I believe that they will start this exercise early this time around, and there is going to be improvement. We live in hope, and we know that when you have hope and faith, then the people can basically believe in you as well.
That's very true. Let's shed light on some of the challenges the Inspectorate faces in carrying out this exercise and enforcing asset declarations.
Well, one of the challenges we face is there are countries that are, they're not countries, they're districts that are within hard-to-reach areas where they're complaining about data, where they do not have electricity, and so on. So we have been on the ground and sent technical people to those areas to help. But within the Inspectorate of Government, we are also constrained resource-wise, because government is also constrained. But progressively, with the availability of resources, I know we are going to keep improving from step by step. For instance, handling the exercise, we have manpower gaps, but now that means we have to rely heavily on the focal point persons. Otherwise, those should be staff of the Inspectorate of Government. Focal point persons whom we have to pick from ministries, departments, and agencies and train them to do our work, train them to help us do our work. But going forward, we will get clearance to have to recruit our own staff, and we will be able to improve in that area also. Then we have challenges of transport. Our fleet is dilapidated and old, and yet people have to go to the countryside, they have to investigate, they have to go for awareness programs. And but we manage, you know, you cut your coat according to the cloth.
Right.
So that is exactly what we are doing. And I believe we will try to manage with the minimum resources we have to produce output. But going forward, we are still hopeful that we will be able to get resources to go ahead and do the verifications as required by the law. Yes.
Let's look at some of the feedback coming through. And thank you so much for watching and following the conversation. 0709602592. Text by WhatsApp and indeed be part of the conversation. Good morning. Corruption case was reported to the IGG's office last year about mismanagement of government funds given to teachers and swindled by officials of Walimu Cooperatives Union. Nothing was done about it. Was the IGG's office compromised? That's the first question. And dear host, I appreciate the work of the IGG and what she does, the deputy IGG, but what's that the IGG needs to do more to check on recruitment processes by government and other private agencies where job seekers are paying heavy monies to secure the job? On pension, my father, now the late, pursued his pension in vain. By the time he died, he had not been given his gratuity. And when his pension came out in paper in 2021 as administrator of estate, I have pursued this pension for the past 5 years and nothing up to today. Thank you. This is Alex from Arua. Good morning. My question is, what can I do if I apply for a contract and my paper reaches procurement or accounts for payment, but to find out a person in office tells me that the ministry has no money without a clear explanation, as if the officers are interested in doing what I applied for? For now, let me allow you answer those before I get into more of them.
Thank you very much, our viewers, for those brilliant questions, for the comments and observations. Well, like you heard in the challenges, how we are constrained. But about the teachers' mismanagement of the Walimu Cooperative Union, this matter was reported last year. I know about this case quite well. And shortly before we went in for election, something again came up. The teachers' circle, the teachers needed to make use of their circle. They needed to benefit from these resources. And some people again went back and blocked and claimed that there was corruption. But the Inspector General of Government is investigating, handling this matter herself, and soon feedback will come out on this issue of the teachers' circle and mismanagement, because now the teachers cannot even benefit from what they expect to get from the circle, because there are those allegations of mismanagement already, and yet they need to have this money to better themselves. District Service Commission, thank you very much for bringing up that issue. We are, like I talked about, the whole government approach. Right. We have a whole report, a study was conducted on corruption by District Service Commission and this whole sale of jobs, and there are recommendations therein, and we are moving forward to cleaning up the system, like you had me talk about the whole government approach as one of those approaches we are going to take to ensure that sanity is brought within the District Service Commission when it comes to issues of recruitment. We have heard that there are people paying for jobs, but there are people, when they pay for these jobs, Julie, and they don't come to report. But when someone has paid this 10 million and hoped to be a human resource manager, and he's not given the job, that's when he comes to report. But we encourage citizens to be vibrant. You don't have to pay money for a job. Interviews should be competitive, and we are now moving towards ensuring that there is sanity in the system, to ensure that there is no middleman who will come and tell you, Chairman Agambie, give me 5 million or 10 million. Those are the middlemen we want to deal with within our District Service Commission. And then pension, it's quite unfortunate, Alex, for 5 years. How I hope you are able to report this matter to our offices, and if you take it to the Arua Regional Office, please put it to the attention of Dr. Patricia Achano Kiria, because I will send this matter to the Director, Ombudsman Affairs, and it will be addressed quite very fast, because the pension things are easy to do within the Ombudsman Directorate. Procurement, ministries, where someone says ministry has no money, well, that needed more clarity. I don't know what kind of procurement, but I know that the procurement responsibility is about acquiring and disposing of assets, and when you want to do something, an activity, you've got to take this whole process of procurement. But there should be a heads up from the accounting officer to assure you that there are availability of funds or there are no funds for that particular procurement activity. And don't take offense when they tell you there is no funds. When they tell you there are no funds for a particular activity, then you should not take offense, because if there are no funds, then there are no funds. But we live in hope. Like I said, even we in the Inspectorate of Government have resource constraints. So when there are no funds, you cannot invent a will, or, you know, but you work with what you have. When funds are available, then you can get clearance to continue with a procurement activity.
Alex, I hope you've received the feedback and point of action that you need to take. Somebody else comes through and says, good morning, UBC. What happens when someone underdeclares their wealth? This is Philip from Lira. He says people have a certain fear when it comes to wealth and property. And he says again, in a case where a non-Ugandan is working for a government agency as an expatriate, for example, the newly appointed CEO of Uganda Airlines, are such people exempted from declarations?
Thank you very much. That is very brilliant. We have expatriates who work for us, like that example of the CEO. As long as his salary and emoluments come from the government of Uganda, he's got to declare, because we have received declarations from the staff of the Uganda Airlines as well.
Right.
Yes.
Let's begin.
Under declaration, sorry,
oh yes, under declaration.
When you under declare, it's of course an offense under the law, and you've got to be punished when sanctioned. So you need to declare the truth. And why are we talking about the truth? Because we're talking about accountability, transparency, and we're building trust among the people whom you're leading. Yes.
Right. Beginning to roll this conversation and its carpet out of the room. What does the next tenure look like for you as you continue serving Uganda and of course working alongside the new IGG Justice Batala?
Thank you very much. The next tenure is quite exciting. We see light at the end of the tunnel, and we have come in with energy. If I did the first tenure, I think I've got to double that energy in order to have significant impact. You have seen our strategic plan, where we're thinking about new innovative approaches in dealing with corruption as a cancer. We're taking it across. You've heard about the sectoral ombuds. We're talking about transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption strategy, which should spread out all ministries, departments, and agencies. We are taking the presence of the Inspectorate of Government down to the people. And recently, you saw my boss, the Inspector General of Government, in the countryside, visiting the regional offices and doing spot checks. So we are basically calling on the public to join hands in the war against corruption. We're calling on public officers to comply with the declaration requirements. We are also currently updating the register for public officers to facilitate the upcoming declarations, so that public officers who are requested to provide their phone numbers, email addresses to the respective focal point persons can do so in time within their districts, within the municipalities, within their institutions. This will help us give you feedback, especially when it comes to the declarations. This will help us send that token with ease, so that you're able to access the system and declare. And then early submission of information to the focal point persons will prevent the last minute challenges I was talking about.
Right.
So for us, as a new team in the Inspectorate of Government, we are very optimistic that we are going to have a significant impact, and with the support of the citizens, we will go a long way in dealing with this cancer of corruption, especially the syndicated corruption. And remember, I told you about some of the new strategies where we are looking at doing the intelligence-based investigations, prosecution-led investigations, where we're having prosecutors tagging along with the investigators so that we get leads. And we're looking forward to having improved conviction rates, because now this will go a long way in strengthening the prosecution arm of the Inspectorate of Government. And I think for us that is a plus.
Indeed.
And the leader comes with special energy because she is experienced, she has been a prosecutor before, a justice of the High Court, and she is really vigilant and grounded in the area of law and prosecutions. So for me, I am very happy that we are going to be able to work together and strengthen the prosecution arm of the Inspectorate of Government, but also make a significant impact in the overall war against corruption, because we are looking at giving feedback to the citizens on the progress in the war against corruption. And when citizens have feedback, then even the perception basically changes, and they will have more trust in the institution, and we'll work together and minimize the cancer.
Right. Now, as a citizen of Uganda, I am one who shall definitely be following up on the updates, because ideally for my country, I'd love to see my country corruption-free. And as the strategic plan takes shape that was launched last week by the IGG, as you've had Dr. Patricia mention, the support of the citizen is needed. I pledge as a citizen of Uganda, by my right and mandate, to support the IGG and make sure that in whatever small role I can play, I'm able to kick corruption out of Uganda. And I hope no one also stifles the work and strategic plan that has already been aligned. I hope no stifling goes in there out of conflict of interest or out of individual selfish gain. Dr. Patricia, it's been such an honor having you.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much, viewers out there, for listening in, for the comments, the observations, and even the questions. Have a blessed day ahead.
All right. Lovely day to you indeed. Ruben is coming up with the sport. Good morning.